from what I understood, the Supreme Audit Institution are public bodies responsible for the independent audit of government revenue and expenditure. By scrutinizing public financial management and reporting, they provide assurance that resources are used towards the intended policy purposes reflected in the budget. They undertake financial audits of organizations, accounting procedures, and financial statements, and compliance audits reviewing the legality of satisfaction made by the audited body. They also conduct performance audits to scrutinize the efficiency, effectiveness, or economic of government. Well, although this was not mentioned in the note that you gave, but the Supreme Audit Institutions operate on three structures or three frameworks. But for Sierra Leone, I'm representing, we are using, I will name all the three frameworks, but for Sierra Leone, we are using the Westminster or the parliamentary model of the Supreme Audit Institution. So this framework is a body, has an organized independent audit service commission for Sierra Leone, in which it is headed by the Auditor General. So the Auditor General takes the responsibility to give financial audit reports on yearly basis to the parliament every year. So we also have some countries like this type of this framework or models can be used by different other countries, especially by the majority of the Commonwealth countries can use this as well. If I think Ghana are using this and Nigeria, they are also using this. It is a type of framework which the United Kingdom also use. We have also the
let me clarify this, that Supreme Audit Institutions have nothing to do with the parliamentary system that is being run. What you're referring to as the Westminster style is basically the parliamentary, the legislature, okay, that is running in your country. But Supreme Audit Institutions stand in between the legislature and the bureaucracy. So when they have conducted their work, they are normally one audit agency, the foremost audit agency in the country, which does its work and then submits findings to the legislature. So it is not the legislature itself, but another agency that submits its work to the legislature. Thank you. Please continue. You may wrap up for us and do the next one.
Okay. Yes, but anyway, that is what how it goes in. So we have the leader
where you are, there is noise in the background, so it keeps disturbing others.
Okay. Then let me find someone. I'm sorry for that. So there are also other service body like the France and the broad allocate collateral or collegiate model also, but it's practiced by other countries as well. But this is similar to Supreme Audit Institution, according to the note here, focuses on what we are expecting from them, highlighted, outlined below as facilitating strategic planning for effective stakeholder engagement, electronic audits, audit management system strategies, training and coaching to cover both technical skills and audit outsourcing. So these are what we are expecting from them, or what their roles are, which we expect they have to do. So going back to coming to the second aspect of our team, which was the independent statistical services. The independent statistical services has served as a national state agency providing simple and effective reporting solution for property or casualty insurance industry. So this happened since this started since 1947. It helped insurers keep in compliance with statistical data reporting required by state regulation.
Okay, enough of that. Thank you very much. Let's have our next person. I think Stephen Kube, your hand had been up for some time now. Let's listen to you, Stephen.
Good morning, Mr. Ketchup. And I just wish to plead that I'm equally in a very noisy environment, because sooner or later they are doing construction works here at my place. So I will just want to call on either one of my team members to take over.
All right, thank you for alerting us on that. Blessing Williams, you may want to take over. Blessing, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yes, my name is Blessing Williams from Nigeria. So we were assigned 5 teams yesterday: parliamentary oversight, tax administration, decentralization, cash management, and outsourcing. So we decided 3 persons will speak for us, and I'm the first speaker. So I'm speaking on parliamentary oversight and tax administration.
Thank you.
So parliamentary oversight of public finance is the role of the legislative body in scrutinizing and monitoring the government's management of public funds to ensure accountability, transparency, and efficient use of public resources. So the measures suggested by Deloitte include incoming administration, briefing, and also committee research. And speaking of tax administration, it refers to the management and implementation of tax laws and policies by a government or authorized agencies. It could be private sectors. Countries require efficient tax administration systems to minimize the cost of collections while taking a risk-based approach to minimize fraud and corruption and ensure efficient application of tax rules, also providing timely and accurate information to policymakers and tax administration executives. So this has offered to develop efficient tax administration systems include institutional and human capacity building, facilitating strategic planning for effective stakeholder engagement, designing business process for various interactions with taxpayers and importers and exporters to minimize regulatory burden, and also facilitate executives to develop corruption prevention strategies. So I'm going to call on Shadrach to speak on decentralization and cash management. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Blessing. Shadrach, you want to take over?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Blessing, for the wonderful presentation. My name is Shadrach. I'm from Nigeria. I'm the second speaker, and I'll be talking on decentralization and outsourcing. All right. So when we talk about decentralization, we are looking at basically how to deal with the separation of power, policy making power and execution power among all the democratic institutions. I believe you all saw the slide, so I won't be reading verbatim what is on the slide. So I'll try to, as much as possible, to explain what we understood from the slide. So the separation of power and also decision making from different democratic institutions. It's also maybe could be around the federal government, the state government, and the local government level. Now, this entails for proper efficiency and simplicity carrying out of projects, right? And um, for decentralization is part of the new public management policy and reforms, which makes that it's easier for projects and policy making to be spread across different bodies or stakeholders so that they can be more efficient, right? So even though decentralization is a good factor in the new public management, it has a lot of challenges because some levels of government don't have the capacity, they don't have the finance, and there may not be properly equipped policies to carry out such projects or maybe give them such functions to carry out. Let me take, for example, in Nigeria, we have the exclusive legislative list, which has the duties solely accrued to the federal government. And we also have the concurrent legislative list, which also has the duties of the state government. Now, in a decentralized state, some of these duties or policy making can be shared even to the local government, right? And one of the things that Deloitte is proposing to actually solve this challenge, where some of the levels of government may not have the capacity to function with the duties that are to them, is by proper financing and creating self-revenue for this, maybe the local government to generate their own revenue to solve some of the projects. And it also has to do with equity, so that some projects that are given to the local governments are projects that they can actually handle, whereas the federal government can take up some other projects. But in the general essence, decentralization is very important for efficiency, so that every arm of government or different sectors can have something to do, and also they can do proper needs assessment. They are closer to the people and know what they do, so that for the interest of the policy. On outsourcing is a very important also factor in the new public management strategy. It can be said as leveraging at the solutions of others, leveraging at the technical competence of others. I remember in one of the videos where we were taught in the modules, the facilitator said that the government doesn't have any business in business. This is because they don't really understand the technicalities of business. So in outsourcing, we are looking at the government outsourcing some of its responsibilities to the private sector. And in my country, Nigeria, one of the very key, places where we've seen that is in the electricity and power sector, where the government has outsourced that to private, the private sector is in charge of our power generation and distribution, actually, not generation. So we see that for efficiency, of government projects, and also it's also very good that governments take up our sourcing policies. And Deloitte, from their slide, one of the things they are proposing is creating some smart cities where they are the advent of technology, and also doing some statistical analysis that can actually influence the decision of the government. This is my submission for my part. I would want the last speaker, Nora. I don't know okay, Nora is there. Nora, if you can just proceed with the last presentation on cash management. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, the last speaker for Nigeria.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Shadrach, for that well-spoken presentation. So I'm Nora, also from Nigeria, and I'll be looking at cash management. So cash management is one of the effective way of for public management strategy. And before looking at what Deloitte has said or stated in their slide, so in banking and public sector, the term cash management refers to the day-to-day administration and managing cash inflows and outflow. So because of the multitude of cash transactions on a daily basis that involves in the economy, the ultimate goal of cash management is to maximize liquidity, and minimize the cost of funds. So the challenges Deloitte pointed out that arise due to various economic issues and crises any country may experience is one. There are many factors that are looked in before considering or before implementing the process of establishing a single treasury account. And what do you mean by a single treasury account? Is a public accounting system that uses a single account or a set of linked accounts by the government to ensure that all revenues and receipts and payments are done through a consolidated platform or through an account. In a peculiar case in Nigeria, we have various single treasury accounts. Like you want to pay for probably university, JAM, and some things, you have to go through Remitter, and through the Remitter platform, you're able to make such payments, and it goes directly to the government account. So it doesn't have to be splitted, where it's a way of probably consolidating all accounts that have to be involved with disbursements, payments, receipts, and payments for various transactions and for various purposes. The other issue raised is that implementing government's modern electronic payments mechanism is a difficult thing because so many banks and financial institutions are not really capable of having a solid electronic payment mechanisms. And you can imagine if government has 30 to 60% of all payments in the economy. How do you say? Because they pay salaries, they award contracts to various people, they do so many things, revenues are remitted online to government account and all that. Is a major problem in implementing effective electronic payments mechanisms. Another issue pointed by Deloitte is the accurate cash flow forecasting. So it's a major problem if a cash flow cannot be forecast for future and analysis and all that, which is required to actively monitor our daily cash management to also maximize the cash balances that we have, the central cash balance or cash boards in the economy. Another point stated also is a high qualified team that is needed in Treasury to develop this capacity that we stated before. For a short-term cash flow, we need a short-term cash flow forecast. A shorter-term market instrument is needed to also maximize these cash balances in the economy. And what are the solutions that Deloitte is providing to some of these things in assisting government?
You have just about 30 seconds to wrap up.
Okay, 30 seconds. One of the solutions is to harness costs, to establish control and systematic procedures, to develop forecasting consolidation models, and to develop cash flow forecasting capabilities in various institutions. And the last one, to improve and innovate the banking services via the e-channel. So all these things listed here will help the cash management of any economy to effectively drive the banking, to drive effectively the way cash is moved around the economy in any country. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nora, for that, and thank you for the Nigerian team and that submission. So we'll move on. For now, we have Sierra Leone and then Nigeria. So I see Bridget, your hand up. Let's take from Bridget.
All right, good afternoon, and this is Bridget Sedambobo, representing Team Ghana. So I will be presenting on tax policy and then macro fiscal policy. So from the document that we had, we wanted to explain what tax policy is to an ordinary person. So we explained it as tax policy refers to all the decisions and main directions that determine the characteristics of a tax system and make it possible to finance public spending and support economic activity. The purpose of tax policy is to determine how the funds required to finance governmental spending will be collected so as to ensure a stable and sufficient supply of revenue. However, the challenge here is a domestic tax system which needs to operate to support the nation in a complex, evolving and global market at a global marketplace. One of the challenges is also national competitiveness. Poverty reduction and wealth redistribution are at the core of the tax policy debate. According to Deloitte, countries need a well-structured tax system to ensure stability. However, in the sub-Saharan African countries, tax policies are focused on infrastructure growth and maintenance, but governments are increasingly incorporating other policy objectives through the tax system. Some of the solutions that were outlined by experts included that Deloitte can assist governments in identifying different tax policy options or mixes of options to be studied and modeled. They can also provide valuable knowledge, expertise, and examples from hundreds of jurisdictions worldwide. Also, Deloitte also outlined that they can also assist governments in the design of tax policy in developing and implementing forecasting methodologies and tools. These forecasting tools and methodologies can provide insights into the impact of different mixes of tax policies on the economy under key scenarios. I will come to macro fiscal policy. The macro fiscal policy formulates and implements sound economic policies and public financial management. However, the macro fiscal policy has become more predominant since the 2008 Great Recession, leading to year-on-year deficit spending. In some countries, it is time to reverse this trajectory, while in others, it is necessary to continue a fiscal policy stance to drive the economy away from recession. Globalization has increased the complexity of economic forecasting.
You have 1 more minute, Bridget.
Solution: integrating tax policy options into wider fiscal scenarios requires a comprehensive understanding of the overall budget, including the government's revenue and expenditure priorities. This involves developing medium-term fiscal and expenditure scenarios that take into account various revenue and expenditure options. At this point, I would call on my colleague, Hafsa, to continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget, for that. Hafsa, is your hand up? Hafsa, I see you open your mic. Please continue. Hafsa, are you there? Otherwise, we will move to any other speaker who is ready. So let's take Kojo Ananivi. Your hand is up.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, good afternoon, Kojo.
Okay, this is Kojo from Togo, and we'll be presenting on procurement and supply chain. We are 3, but my other fellows are not allowed due to some connection problem. So I'll be talking about the challenges we have in procurement and supply chain. Procurement must ensure goods and services are delivered efficiently and on time for programs operations. Open land competition procurement drives private sector innovation to deliver savings to government. For example, if we take in the public sector, failures in the supply chain can risk human life and well-being and the security of the nation. Public sector supply chains must reach citizens in the most remote location, as well as having international reach to the acquired technology, expertise, and commodities not otherwise available nationally. And you also have market distortion must also be managed. Public sector procurement operates in markets where state-owned enterprise operate. So clear separation is required between government ownership function and the shareholding public sector. Procurement also operates in the monosonistic market. Example, Russia, military equipment and supplies, where government is often the only customer, and in the market where there are a small number of large customers, international reach brings the complexity of cross-border transaction. We also have one problem in the procurement and chain and supply chain. It is also a high-risk area for corrupt activities. and must be transparent and controlled to mitigate risk. Information technology can support transparency and controls, but change management for implementation of this system is key to ensure coverage of all procurement and all supplies. So what are the solutions we do have for this? We have assisting government to develop procurement policies, procedures, and systems that can mitigate risk. And also we have effective use of bench marketing, or marking, price reviews, and market intelligence to achieve values for money. We also have designing procurement plans and strategies for programs that are based on high quality markets, read to understand supply side and enhance transparency and competition. Store management systems that are fit for purpose, from basic office supplies, management to warehousing for health and defense. Supporting government and anti-corruption efforts through procurement audit service, including forensic audit to support investigation and powerful purchasing analytics to flag warning signs of corruption practice. And the final one we have here is electronic government procurement system, strategies, requirements, definition, project management, quality assurance, human resources development. So this is what we have in our procurement and supply chains that I would like to share with you guys. Thank you very much.
I take notes, Kojo, for probably the difficulty in communicating in the English language, but equally I take notes the fact that you were literally reading for us, which is not a very good presentation skill or a good approach to presentation. So kindly take note of that in subsequent submissions. No matter what, we prefer you speak to the points instead of reading literally everything word for word for us. All right, thank you very much. At least we have some representation from Togo. I see, Stephen, your hand is up. If you can quickly do that for us in the next 2 to 3 minutes. Stephen Kube.
Okay. For Cameroon, we were given the opportunity to work on the financial intelligence, governance, and action. I do not know if you can see my screen at all.
Not yet, but you may want to reshare if you have something to share with us.
Because I'm really sharing at the moment.
You may want to pull it down and then share it again, because we can see you're using the phone. We see the frame, but not the item you want to share with us.
Fortunately. Does it display now?
Yes, we can see it now.
Yes, we are good to go, bro. We are good to go.
Able to work on a public financial management document which was shared. We were able to identify some problems, and the problems which we were able to source from it were basically those which were our existential problems in Cameroon, and they were focused on illicit financial markets, fraud and money laundering, terrorist financing, terror and corruption. And on these, we had to think of solutions around the various difficulties and problems that were affecting us in Cameroon. And we're able to find out some of the laws that were existent in place, the policies in place that were enabling an environment that is safer from terrorism, from from corruption, and equally safe from illicit fraud and money laundering. So we're able to bring out aspects of forensic investigation, which was gotten from the document itself to expose wrongdoings, computerized electronic tracking, flagging, and report for finance systems. And likewise, the use of enterprise resource planning systems to track illicit activities and improve on productivity. And likewise, I would we equally thought of the presentation in the sense that perhaps each person will be able to have the opportunity to have their voice heard on their contributions which they made. And that's why we made some of these points here. And if Dr. Pefela is there, we could probably come in now to maybe give in a few words, and then Dr. Yawat, and subsequently those who are on with us, if I'm permitted.
Yes. Whichever arrangement you made with your teammates is allowed.
All right. Dr. Pefela.
Okay, yes, please. Greeting everyone. I'll be talking on the corruption and financing of terrorism with regards to the problem that were raised, and we are looking at the possibility of how Cameroon have tried to address those issues. We understand that corruption is one of the issues that is actually plaguing Africa as a continent, and Cameroon in particular. And the government of Cameroon is not an exception in fighting corruption. And that is why for the government to effectively fight against corruption, they had to put in place the Anti-Corruption Commission, which is in charge of investigating aspect of corruption and then reporting it to the government. Actually, when they carry out their report, they have to send it to the head of state, which will now have to put in measures that are supposed to sanction these aspects of corruption. And as the parliament are equally put in place laws that are supposed to sanction this aspect of corruption, which is found in the Penal Code of Cameroon 2016, the Penal Code of July 2016, which actually in certain provisions have sanctioned aspect of corruption, be passive or active, in sense that the person who is trying to corrupt and also the person who is also actually to corrupt, all of them are supposed to be charged with aspect of corruption. Apart from that, we have another disturbing issue, which is the aspect of financing terrorism. We understand that Cameroon is going through some turbulence lately since 2016 with aspect of terrorism, aspect of the riots, the crisis, and so on. And the government in 2014, with the law of 2014, had to bring in measures to see into it that those who are actively taking part in terrorism and those who are financing terrorism are equally supposed to be sanctioned. And these are some of the measures that the government have put in place to see into it that corruption, terrorism, finance of terrorism, and other aspects are severely sanctioned so as to shape the society and put it to the right track. So I think without monopolizing the discussion, I'll have to stop here and then bring in other speakers to also substantiate from our work. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Team Maureen, for that. We'll proceed to Hafsa. I see your hand is up. Would you want to continue for Team Ghana? Hafsa, we are not able to hear you.
I think she has a problem with her microphone.
Okay, and I noticed she has opened
I'll
her
just
video as well, but nothing seemed to work for her. And so, Mohammed, if you want to continue, please do that now.
Yeah, so our discussion was on Ghana's tax policy, that is the PMF tax policy, macro fiscal policy, treasury, and then trust administration. So First of all, I'm going to talk about what the PFM is. So it refers to like a set of processes, policies, and then systems that are used by the government to manage public funds, budgeting, accounting, and also to make auditing. So in reference to tax policy, the Ghana's tax policy is mostly aimed at raising the revenue for the government. And the revenue is the main body for...
Mohammed, your colleague Bridget had started with tax policy. So for the sake of time, you may want to go straight to what was left.
Okay, so maybe I'll go for Treasury.
Okay, yeah, just go straight to the point.
So the Ghanaian Treasury is responsible for managing the government financial resources, and mostly they ensure the efficient and effective use of these resources. And the Treasury manages the government accounts, its cash and debt, and is mostly responsible for issuing government securities, such as the Treasury bills and also mostly their bonds. And also government uses it to manage its payroll and the pension systems. Thank you.
All right, thank you. But I think that is not done for Team Ghana. You have about two more, trust administration, and then
so
macro fiscal policy.
For the trust administration, that one, it refers to the management of the funds that are held in trust to the government. So it includes the petroleum funds, which the government receives through the country's oil and gas resources. And also we have the District Assembly's Common Fund, which provides the funding for the local government authorities. And we also have Public Interest Accountability Committee. And they are mostly responsible for overseeing the management of the petroleum funds and also ensuring that there is transparency and accountability in disbursing and use of these funds. I think that does it for the trust administration.
Any particular challenges and solution or opportunities you see in there?
Come again?
I was asking if there were any challenges you've noticed. So what you discussed with us are the specifics in the case of Ghana. And we're asking, do you observe any challenges or opportunities that you can talk to us about?
Mostly the challenges is just, it has to do with corruption and nepotism. That is made by the government structure throughout the government structure. So it mostly affects all these administrative responsibilities and also disbursing of the public funding. I think that is what I have to say on in terms of this trust administration and also funding by the government.
All right, thank you very
Sir,
much.
please, if I may, this is Eunice for Ghana.
Okay.
Yes. So one of the issues with, I'll take the District Assembly Common Fund, is that because our tax base in Ghana is not wide, just a few people are mandated to pay tax. So when the funds are gathered, distributing it becomes a problem. So at our various assemblies, we don't get the funds on time. So, and then this goes a long way to affect developmental projects in the local level. So one problem we have is our tax system. We have to broaden it up so that we will be able to collect the revenue and then distribute them on time.
Yeah, so when just to bring some perspective on that, when we talk of the tax net, the tax administration, there is the direct taxes and then the indirect taxes. Indirect taxes, it goes very far. So the tax net is quite wide. But the challenge mostly has to do with the direct taxes, where one of those include the income taxes. And as many people try to evade some of those, which is what we need to look at widening. Mostly people in the formal sector are the ones who end up paying, and the informal sector is mostly left out. So that is the particular area that we may want to focus on a little, or possibly for the sake of equity, if you want to scrap the direct taxes altogether and then increase the indirect taxes, since that one touches everyone, even including sugar that anybody would buy, whether poor or rich. So
Yes.
yeah, thank you very much for that.
Thank you too.
Yeah, so we have Ghana, we have Nigeria, we have Cameroon, we have Sierra Leone, we have Togo spoken, Liberia, the Gambia, and then Burkina Faso are yet to speak, these three countries. Any representative for them? In the next 5 seconds, if I see no hand for either countries, we will proceed. All right, thank you very much for the different submissions. And as we started yesterday, PFM is a very interesting concept, and it touches everyone. And so it's something that we will not want to take lightly as learners in this cohort. As change agents, wherever we're working, we are encouraged to do the best we can to make sure that the different things, the different institutions in our country that we have looked at, from the legislature through the audit agencies, the statistical authorities, everyone plays their role as much as possible. And as much as we saw in the video yesterday, citizens are equally called on to play their active roles in PFM. So we will want to, just a moment. Okay, so I'm going to show this video for us to, to help us summarize our learnings. So just a moment, and then we will have that. I hope we can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Great.
One of the things you asked me was how we judge whether a PFM system is efficient or not. And it's actually not a very simple question. I ought to be able to give you a simple answer, but there isn't one. And the reason why is because what a PFM system tries to do is itself quite varied. So we normally think of a PFM system as having 4 objectives. The first is just to protect aggregate given too much debt, putting it simply. Secondly, it should allocate resources to strategic priorities. So what happens with a lot of PFM systems is that you end up allocating money to maintaining buildings and paying salaries and doing things, and then you ask yourself, well, this isn't really what we wanted to do. We somehow want to organize our allocations and change them so that they're going to build priorities. So getting resources to priorities is the second objective. The third is to ensure value for money in service delivery. In other words, we want to be delivering services which give us the best combination of economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. And finally, we want to ensure transparency and accountability. As I've said before, this is a human value in itself. The problem for a PFM system is that you've got to do these four things simultaneously. And that's where the problem lies. Quite a lot of governments insist on strict fiscal sustainability, but they often do it at the expense of services. They don't necessarily cut the low priority services. They cut what's easiest to cut. They don't necessarily do it in a very transparent way. This could often be done in closed doors, in deals between ministers and ministries of finance. It's not a transparent process. So to maintain fiscal discipline, allocate resources to your priorities, ensure value for money and transparency simultaneously, not simple. But the OBI allows us to measure this. Our fiscal data allows us to measure this. What's very difficult to measure is this bit in the middle. Because strategic priorities may change from one government to another, and they would change from one society to another. Some societies value education and health much more than infrastructure and electricity generation and energy supplies and things like that. But different governments, different perceptions of what are strategic priorities. And then to measure value for money, you need to measure in some detail the way in which services are being delivered, how efficient they are, how effective they are, and how equitable they are. There are some ways of doing that, but they involve very detailed studies. So you can't easily measure these two things when you're going into a particular country or local government to examine their PFM system. So what we try to do is to look at the rules and procedures and practices which are most likely to ensure that these four things happen simultaneously. And there's systems for judging that. There's an international system called the PIFA methodology, the Public Expenditure and Financial Accountability methodology, which has a set of 31 indicators. And that allows us to reach a judgment on whether the practices and institutions most likely to generate these four are working. But there's always a little bit of debate. Sometimes some people say, well, PIFA methodology is not appropriate to our country. We'd like to use something a little bit different. So there's always a little bit of a gray area about the question. And really what one tries to do is to reach a judgment, to try to make sure that the leaders in the particular country involved with managing the system share your judgment, and then from that you move to some ideas about how to reform it. How do we ensure that we're going to get a successful public finance management reform? Most research and experience suggests we need three things. We need leadership. Specifically, it's got to be both political and technical. Now, just the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Finance should be wanting reform. The Minister of Finance needs to want reform. The Prime Minister or the President also needs to want reform. And that needs to be supported by good communication and coordination. Very often you've got well-committed politicians, but they don't communicate their ideas very well. They don't have a good coordinating team to make sure it all happens. Secondly, you need what I describe as policy space. In other words, the opportunity to generate appropriate reforms suitable for each individual context. One of the things we said earlier was that different countries will have slightly different PFM systems for cultural and social reasons and for very valid reasons. So that means, by extension, that the reform that is needed in one country is unlikely to be the same reform needed in another country. And to get back to your question about the biggest frustration, one of the biggest frustrations for me and for my colleagues working in this area is that usually this policy space is not allowed, in particular for developing countries. Donor agencies typically have a predefined set of ideas about what they think reform should look like. They virtually force governments to adopt these reforms, and it's not surprising that those reforms rarely work properly. So what's needed is policy space, and what I describe here as an adaptive, iterative, and inclusive process. In other words, making reform happen with public finance management, maybe with other things too, is all about learning. It's about recognizing from the outset that you don't necessarily know the right way forward. You have an idea, of what might improve systems, and you therefore start off with that, and you monitor as you go along. You say, well, it's working quite well in country X, but not in country Y. Why is that? How can we refine what we're doing? Or within a particular country, it might work in local government in the south, but not a local government in the north. Why is that? Is there something about the reform? Is there some tweaking we can do to make it work better? So it's very much about learning and having sort of feedback loops. You carry out a reform in year one, you go back on yourself, you ask questions, you ask the users of the system, how has it worked for you? You get the feedback and then improve on it. And that process allows you to generate policy space to generate reforms that are likely to be appropriate. It's very rare that that actually happens, unfortunately, because governments maybe are too ambitious, want to get things done too fast. Donor agencies, again, have agendas which are very short. They insist on getting results in a short period of time. They don't necessarily want to leave the time and space for this adaptive learning process to work. But this is exactly how you get reform. And the countries that have been able to do this are the ones which have sustained their reforms best. Somebody asked me about mimicry, isomorphic mimicry. Well, I said earlier that we shouldn't use jargon, and this is one of the worst bits of jargon you can imagine. But what it means is that instead of actually doing something, you pretend to do something. So, for example, one of the common reforms around the world is to move towards more complicated systems of accounting. There's a system of accounting called accrual accounting, which is based on assessing assets as well as assessing spending. Well, one can be moving towards accrual accounting over 5 years, over 10 years, and it's often an excuse for not doing any reforms to the accounting system at all, and simply pretending that one is stepping towards accrual.
Okay, thank you very much for this moment. Just by way of summary, we noticed the core elements of a functioning, a properly set up PFN system. One being leadership, and he highlighted leadership both of the political class and of the technical class, facilitated by their communication. Next is the policy space to be able to take decisions. So you don't wait till your situation gets so dire that you don't have as much options to begin to fix these things. You need to get out of this situation first, I mean the crisis first, to create room, to create the policy space before proper PFM reforms can be implemented, changes that you want instituted can happen. But take an example of the situation in Ghana, where the policy space is so close because the economy is on the verge of collapsing. And so you need to work with partners like the IMF, for instance, to help stabilize your economy before you can begin to go back to some reforms. Remember, Ghana has gone to the IMF a couple of times, and several times they have had to make recommendations, including the setting up of the current PFM Act. Parliament passed it. It was supposed to have been running, but officials who are to make sure it is running well were not doing the useful things. That's where the third point he highlights comes in. The evaluation, the monitoring, things that the iterative learning that needs to take place. What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? What do we need to make change of? And all that. These need to be happening. But when political leaders take entrenched positions and choose to do what pleases them, you will always go back crashing and close up the policy space for yourself. And this is where Ghana, for instance, happens to be at this moment. It's a learning experience for the country as well as other practitioners around the continent. No responsible government would want to take its people, its citizens to that kind of situation. I will want to bring this session to a close, hoping that we have made the most of this learning opportunity. We will move then to our next learning space. I mean, our next learning topic of evidence-informed decision making. So from the online, just a moment, let me share this. So from the online engagements, we noticed the importance of public interest, right? And public interest is said to be upheld when evidence, by evidence, we mean the different insights that come from the different sources are upheld to inform decisions that are made throughout the policy cycle. So normally we'll be looking at some depictions of the policy cycle, but typically we are shown that it's a cycle that starts from conceptualizations of policy problems, and then going through the design of interventions, the implementations, the monitoring, evaluation, communication, and all that. But in reality, it's hardly that cyclical. It is quite complex, and we'll be looking at some depictions of that. But public interest is emphasized that it is upheld when evidence is made to impact the decisions that we make in the course of taking or making public policy. So what is the rationale for evidence use? A key question to ask. I will want one of you audience to open up your mic and then read this text for us. The first rationale for making use of evidence. Someone may want to unmute and then read for us. Yes, I see you. Is it James?
Yes, Jade. My first name is Jade. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Jade.
Okay. So it says, first, we don't want to experiment on citizens, exposing them to the risks of policies whose effects we don't know. Evidence helps here through better understanding of the potential harm and benefits of policies.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Jade. And we have a second rationale here. Another person would want to read that for us. The second rationale for using evidence.
This is
Yes, Baba Mohammed.
Second, we don't want to waste money on policies that turn out to be ineffective and not reach their intended outcomes. Evidence in a particular evaluation evidence helps to tease out which policies and programs work and why.
All right. Thank you very much for that. I hope that is as clear also as possible. And the third rationale, another person would want to read that for us. The third rationale.
Hello.
Yes, Eunice.
Third, we don't want to waste public money on funding research that is not used to benefit the public through better informed policies.
All right. Thank you very much for that. And the fourth one, I saw Eunice, your hand was up earlier.
Yes.
Okay.
Fourth, we want policy making to be as transparent and accountable as possible. Using evidence can help that process.
All right. Thank you very much then. So what then is evidence? What is evidence? And I will want to open up the meeting, a breakout room so that we can think through these two different definitions and see which one we will want to orient towards. So I will have, okay, 7 breakout rooms, and then you will automatically be assigned to that. So quickly, the outcome I'm expecting is for you to tell me which definition you will orient towards and why. That's just as simple as that. So we will do that in the next 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Yes, you are all welcome from the breakout session. I will want to listen to your submissions then. Let me start from room 7. Room 7. If you are ready, you may want to present to us what you had, what your decision was. Yes.
Okay, room 7. We first found out what our various definitions of evidence was, and then from a collective point, we agreed that the definition 1 is the best definition for evidence, because we believe that evidence is a scientific proof that something actually, scientific proof backing a belief.
Okay, thank you very
so
much.
We think.
That's Eunice, right?
Yes, please.
All right. Preferably, people who have not spoken yet should make the submissions, but if that's not the case, it's also allowed. Yes, room 6, let's listen to you. Room 6. Nobody from room 6. Let's move to room 5 then. Room 5. Still nobody from room 5. Let's move to room 4. Room 4, nobody.
Sorry, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So I think we'll go with the definition of.
Which room are you representing?
This is Shadrach. I was assigned to room 4.
Room 4. Okay, yes, Shadrach.
Okay, so the definition, an output of the scientific process of investigation that produces rigorous information to inform decisions, is, we would think it's a better definition involving the because of the processes that has to do with the scientific investigation. That's more detailed and has to do with not just theories but proven facts. So that informs the reason for this choice.
Okay, so you are joining room 7 to go for definition 1.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Room 6, room 5, anybody ready? Catherine.
Okay, so can you?
Yes,
Okay,
we can hear you.
okay. So for group 6, we go for definition 1, which is an output of a scientific process of investigation that produce rigorous information to inform decision. So why? That's based on my own definition. So the reason behind that is because in a courtroom, basically they make use of evidence and the evidence actually is actually the facts that actually represents whatever thing that they are in support of the assertion that it actually supports the assertion that they are trying to bring into reality. So that's just my own idea to it, my own definition to it.
All right.
Using the illustration of the court.
All right. Thank you very much, Catherine, for that. Room 6, is somebody ready from room 6? Otherwise, we move to room 3. Room 3.
Hello.
Yes.
I'm from room 3. We discussed about our leaders. Yes, it's Hassan.
Okay.
Yes, the process of investigation that produces rigorous information to inform decisions. One of the challenges we face in Africans has to do with our leaders not believing in ourselves, and also some of the leaders that are not opportune to lead in some apex leadership positions, they tend to not to have prior knowledge of how to deal with these investigations. So the challenge we discuss, one of it is not trusting in ourselves, which is the major challenge. And if we are
So
able to,
which of the two are you oriented towards? Definition 1 or definition 2?
Definition 1, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, so room 2.
Yeah, so for room 2, I think we go for the definition 1 that shows an output of a scientific process that of an investigation that produces rigorous information, and it can come in any way, shape, or form. It can be visible, it can be verbal or non-verbal evidence.
Okay.
So that is what we went for.
All right, thank you very much for room 2. Is that Alpha? Okay, so the final room, room 1. Anyone representing room 1?
Okay, you also go for the same definition 1, because you need a scientific process. When we take example of law domain, someone can bring anything as evidence, but that can mess up or destroy someone's life. So we need to go through scientific investigation before accepting that kind of evidence, not to just spoil or destroy things. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Back to room 6. Is somebody ready from room 6? For the final time, room 6. Okay, nobody is ready. Stephen Kube, I see your hand up. Do you want to say something before we proceed?
Sir.
Okay, yes.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So I actually represented from room 6.
You represent Catherine.
Yes, room 6.
Catherine, you were in room 5.
No. I was in room 6, sir.
You were in room 6. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Then it means someone else
Yes,
will need to speak for room 5. Anybody to speak for room 5 in the next 5 seconds? All right. Let's take, yes, I was asking Stephen, your hand is up.
Yes, my hand was up with respect to the two definitions, and with them, in as much as we've discussed it, I was seeing the possibility of having the two as plausible, in the sense that if we're taking the scientific approach, it is systematic, it has varied levels of verifiability and falsifiability that enables us to arrive at the decision we are making. But at the same time, it requires a certain level of rigor, a certain level of strictness too, yet with flexibility. Therefore, it could be possible that the two can incorporate, though the second is not the most feasible form, but it incorporates itself within the first because it is a substrata of it.
Okay, so if I get you right, Okay, so I think you have an idea, so I'll just go straight to the point. All right, the two definitions. Definition one is specific to, let me close the rooms. So definition one is specific to kind of information or insight that is produced from a scientific process, having gone through some rigor in its production. So there's methodological standardization in there. But definition two is quite open. So it includes insights produced from definition one's methodological rigor, as well as other insights produced from less rigorous methodologies. And so by evidence, there are some actors who will orient towards definition one, but more often we refer to definition two. Definition two is all-inclusive and embraces the different kinds of evidence that we'll be looking at very soon. So that is it for these two definitions. So here I would want to emphasize that evidence, we are not looking at the output dimension of evidence as in what shows that something has happened or has not happened, as the courtroom examples that were cited, but we're looking at the input dimension to of evidence, particularly for decision making. So you are going to take a decision whether to take option A or option B. The insights that you will need to consult, the pieces of evidence that you will need to consult, that orients you to take decision whether option A or option B, is what we're looking at. So we're looking at the input dimension of evidence for decisions or policy making. So particularly, we orient towards definition two. I hope that's okay. And the distinction is clear. So we'll continue with that, with the decisions, with the different kinds of evidence that we will be looking at. And here we're looking at what then is evidence-informed decision-making, EIDM. What is it? I will ask someone to read it out for us. Dana Al-Hassan, I see your microphone is open. You have struggled most often to speak. If you are able to speak, I'll give you the chance now. Okay, thank you. I see Yaha Halima, your hand is up. Kindly unmute and speak to us, Halima. You are muted.
Yes.
Okay, Kojo Ananivi, please read that for us.
Okay. It's the consideration of multiple sources of information, including the best available evidence, before making a decision to plan, implement, and where relevant, alter policies, programs, and others.
All right. Thank you very much. Somebody else to give me his or her meaning. What I would want to take 3 different things that you see in this definition, 3 different people to share one each, what you see in this definition. Jade, I want to start from you.
Thank you, sir. So what I understand by this is evidence in decision making is essentially coming to a logical conclusion after examining all the possible outcomes that's available to you.
All right, thank you very much. So all the possible sources of information that is available to you. What else do you see in this definition? Yes, Alema, is if you're There, you may want to unmute and speak. Yahaya Alima. Okay, seems Alima is not with us. And so, yes, so here we're looking at the consideration of multiple sources of information, just as Jade was looking at. So some of the pieces of information we're talking about, the sources of information we're looking at, it says including the best available evidence. So yeah, we'll be looking at the 4 different types of evidence, but here when we say the best available evidence, we're looking at the high quality kinds of evidence. So it says including, it's not limited to the best available evidence, but as wide, that's why earlier it says a consideration of multiple sources of information. So as many pieces of information you have, you need to consider as much as you can, including the high quality ones, before making a decision, which would be to plan, to implement, or where relevant, alter policies or programs. So that is the definition in there. And to an extent, we also look at evidence. Okay, I think it will come in the subsequent slides. So let's go. So these are the 4 main types or the kinds of evidence that we're looking at. Evidence isn't a monolithic category that we say this is evidence, but there are different types of evidence, none of which are more important than the others, and all of which will apply in different situations and contexts. So they all have their strengths and their weaknesses, but so the best approach is actually to combine them, which is why we put them in these interlocking circles. So the best decisions actually come from a consideration of data. And we'll look at some of the kinds of data. We have administrative data, statistical data, research data, and all that. Then we have practice-informed knowledge, knowledge produced from, regular practice of individuals, professionals, as well as institutions. Okay, having practiced something or having operated on particular sectorial issues or policy issues over time, they gain some tacit and other kinds of knowledge that can be made available for decision-making purposes. Then we come to research, which orient towards the high quality types. The definition 1 type of definitions are oriented towards research because there are standardized methodologies for producing these kinds of evidence. And then the 4th category, which is least used by most decision makers or policymakers in Africa, is citizen knowledge. How do the citizens respond to that policy issue? What is their views? What is their feelings? On which side do they orient on these particular issues? Citizens and their insights are equally important. And this is something we should take particular note of. So we have some of the types of evidence here: statistical and administrative data, analytical or research evidence, the definition 1 types, citizens and stakeholder perspectives, evaluations. Also, there are evaluations that are into the practice-informed types, and there are some also that are, evaluations are mostly practice-informed, right? And then expert knowledge. So expert knowledge are more the tacit kind of knowledge, those that are not captured on paper. They are implicit. They are within the memories or the knowledge system, the personalized knowledge systems of these practitioners. But when they are captured on documents in the form of gray literature produced by these organizations, then they become explicit. They are captured, and including evaluations. So all these are different types of evidence that we can consult in making decisions. There are strengths and weaknesses of these different types of evidence. As we're wrapping up, I will want to give 2 minutes to different contributors. You pick one particular type of evidence and you want to explain to us what the strength or the weakness is. So quickly, if you are with us, you may want to raise your hand. I invite you, and then you will talk to us the strengths, weaknesses of these different kinds of evidence. We have data, we have practice informed, we have research evidence, we have citizens evidence. Yes, I see your hand up, Stephen.
Thank you once more. And I'm going for the first type there, which is data.
Okay.
And with data,
you do either the strengths or the weakness. You don't do the two.
Okay, either one or the other.
Yes.
I will go for the weakness.
Okay.
And I'm adding on to this because I've not seen it there. And adding on to it in the sense that there is the aspect of data at the level of collection, the sample size of the data matters a lot. And oftentimes, and I use a critical example in Africa, for example, the World Bank may rate countries in Africa as underdeveloped, whereas they are developed, but only that the information that was collected in order to rate these levels of development was not sufficient enough to back up that information to the point where it begs the question, where did the data come from? How was it collected? What was the sample size? And this is where I have the weakness of data. Thank you.
So it seems you are mixing them up there. Yes, what you say about data and the collection methods. So there are challenges, potential challenges in the quality of the collection methods and all that. But when you're getting it into the analysis side, which for instance, you mentioned the World Bank, that's where we're looking at the methodologies for interpretations. Okay. But yes, these are valid concerns with data. All right, Jade, I see your hand up.
Thank you. I particularly find this session interesting because of the level of learning I'm getting. I resonate with citizens' evidence and the weakness of it because we just finished elections in Nigeria. And I think that a lot of times it's very sentimental, it's devoid of facts, and it's always based on maybe a bias. So it's not necessarily a safe type of evidence to go with in its totality rather.
But so do you think there is opportunity to use citizen evidence then, despite the weakness it has?
Oh yes, there is, because when you aggregate opinions or when you aggregate information, you would see a common thread.
Exactly.
But it needs to be really probed, because you can't really, again, everybody may have gotten their source from like WhatsApp forwarded messages, for example, and everybody has facts and figures from a fake WhatsApp message going around. So they sound informed, but they're not informed. But on the other hand, I do think that if you meet the right set of people or you give the right set of questions, you might actually get interesting insights that you may not know if you didn't come directly to the citizens.
Yes, thank you very much. So you highlight particular weaknesses in there. They have major quality concerns in that they may sound informed, but there's lots of subjectivity in there. So they lack objectivity, and then they may not have been, they may not reflect the wide view of what exists. Okay, so those are some concerns with the quality of citizens' evidence, but its major strength is in the consensus that it presents. So generally, like you mentioned, once you aggregate the citizens' evidence, you get to see some, clustering, you begin to see a general view of what their feelings or what their positions on particular issues are. And this is one key strength of it. Another one is the legitimacy. So by the time you take a decision that is informed by the citizen's position, they will want to accept it. In Ghana, for instance, we have the recent electronics levy, electronic transactions levy, e-levy, that was passed, seemed to have been imposed by governments. Finally, with the back and forth of it, citizens didn't want it. Government managed to impose it, but then funds coming through that levy is very limited, and government will have to look for other means of raising the same funds that they wanted to take from the e-levy. What you want to do, citizens don't want, just listen to them. This is a key thing we should take from this session. Yes, I see your hand up, Sheku Brahma. You want to take any other?
Yeah, I want to talk on the research evidence, the strength.
Okay.
Well, the strength of the research evidence is that it is a very rigorous process in production, including peer reviews. You can say that before coming to conclusion or to conception, it has to go through different methodologies, and even very inclusive in analysis. You can say that different experts comes together and before coming to consensus. So that is really what make that is where the strength lies. Yes, it cannot just be determined by it really requires so many methodology and experts to come to consensus before.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Any other? No other hand? Okay, so there is practice informed knowledge, and it has its own strengths and weaknesses, as you can see from the slides. Okay. There are benefits and concerns for EIDM, but I'll skip that. We would want to go and look at the concept of an evidence ecosystem. I would want someone to unmute and read for us what we mean by an evidence ecosystem here. An evidence ecosystem. Felix, I see your microphone is unmuted. Do you want to read for us, Felix Echampon? Yes, Felix. Likely, Felix, you have a challenge with the microphone also.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Felix. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, this is Felix Echampo. Okay, an interconnected formal and informal relationship between producers and users, but also intermediaries of evidence, whose interaction creates opportunities for continuous and enhanced creation, synthesis and translation, as well as use of evidence in policy making processes.
All right, thank you very much. How do you understand this definition? What do you take from this definition? What do you take from this definition? An interconnected relationship between producers and users, but also intermediaries of evidence. So this relationship, right, their interaction creates opportunities for continuous and enhanced creation, synthesis, and translation, as well as use of evidence in policymaking processes. So what do you understand from this definition to be an evidence ecosystem? What do you take from, what are some components of this definition that you you would want to talk to. Anybody can raise your hand and then speak to it. What do you take from this definition? I want us to break the definition down into components. Nobody? Okay, I see your hand up, Shadrach.
All right. Thank you so much. What I see from this slide is, first of all, we need to understand that an ecosystem has to comprise of different value factors, and in an evidence ecosystem, which means it has to come from a relationship on how these factors interact with each other. So the evidence ecosystem has to do with the producers of the evidence, maybe the researchers or the citizens, or whichever kind of evidence you're using. And then it's also the interaction between the users, the people who probably are subjects to this evidence, and then also their relationship with the intermediaries. Now, this interaction would actually help in decision making, also help in checking whether you have to continue with the research or the evidence, or if you're going to stop. So the interaction between all of these parties is what I understand as the evidence ecosystem. It's not just from a particular end.
All right, thank you very much, Shadrach. Baba Mohammed, yeah, I see your hand up also.
Okay. So please, what I get from this definition is, I will take this from a governance aspect. So basically, governments make policies, but in making these policies, they have to take into consideration that policy making is a chain of processes, starting from the bottom, which is those that are making the policies, for which are the producers. The producers can include researchers, as Shadrach rightly mentioned. They produce the evidence to show that there is a need for a policy to be made regarding a certain situation for the policymakers. And in the middle, we have the intermediaries, who can be civil society organizations that push for these policies to be made. So that's what I get from this definition.
All right, thank you very much for those. Yeah, those are all valuable contributions to this. And typically this reflects the different actors within the ecosystem. Each actor has a role to play. Citizens, maybe, and let's note that it's not to say one actor fits into only one of the roles. Citizens may be users typically, because they pick these insights, these pieces of evidence to inform their decisions. In Nigeria, for instance, the elections that you went into, citizens had their positions based on the insights they were getting from the different pieces of evidence they were getting access to. All right. So, but then they equally could be, okay, let me not use the citizens for that, but researchers, as we're saying. So typically researchers are producing evidence, but equally they are consuming other pieces of evidence. So they are users as well. But even though we normally would want to look at them as producers, right? Researchers may also be considered intermediaries, since they are reproducing most often, all right? We have the media. The media is a typical intermediary actor. They aggregating citizens' positions, citizens' insights, all right, and putting them, using them to set agenda for governments. So they are intermediating the space as well. We have funders of different development initiatives. They also interact and contribute to the fueling of the evidence ecosystem. We have other professionals like librarians, aggregators. There are so many of them who are playing different roles. Government agencies typically are users of evidence, but government agencies also produce evidence through the administrative data. The citizen was in the births and deaths registries are viable sources of data administrative data. We have censuses that are conducted. They are done by government agencies. Those are valuable data points in there that can be used for decision making. So these different actors are considered part of the evidence ecosystem. All right, so as I was speaking earlier, we are typically given the view of a policy cycle, and at each point, we could have evidence, different kinds of evidence to feed into the activities at each stage. So at the diagnosing stage, there are always documents to reflect and to learn from. So at the diagnostics, we have those to help you define the problem, understand the root causes of the problem, and the options possible for addressing the problem. At the design and planning stage, we have the theories of change. We have, design options and operational plan and resources that you could look at. So these all could be used for the planning of the options, or planning and designing of the options. In terms of the outputs, you have, these are the specific evidence, kinds of evidence that could be used. So they are colored all across. Okay, we have the management and monitoring systems and administrative data, as I pointed out earlier, to guide us in evaluating, for instance, whether we are implementing well or not. The budgets, okay, the budgetary framework that we are working with, we need these pieces of data from implementation evaluation, to know whether we are on course, our targets for expenditure, our targets for results, and things like that. Then we can talk also about the outcome stage of or the impacts of the policy decision or the program. And here we're looking at using data like administrative data to establish impacts and outcomes of these things. Value for money. Are we meeting, are we getting the most value for how much we're spending? These are all questions that data can help us to answer, questions that it can help us to answer. Is that okay? Any question at this point on what we have looked at for today? Any questions? Your microphone is open, Sheku. Okay. We are on the top of the hour. If there are questions, I will want to take them at this point. Okay, yes, Eunice, I see your hand raised.
Okay, so I do not really understand the policy making process. I don't know if you can kindly go over that.
Okay, all right, let me go back there. I wanted to show you something first. Okay, seems what I wanted to show you is not here, but let me just use this very simple, this very same one. So here, the policy cycle, normally there are different models that are used. This one that we used in this slide here has the 4 components. Diagnosing stage, where you think through the problem. Okay, so what we are saying is that thinking through the problem, you will need to make use of evidence. Okay, and there are different kinds of evidence. Those are the ones that appear at the tail end of it, right? That you can use in thinking through the problem. The next stage is the planning and design stage, where you need to look at. So diagnosing the problems should ultimately end you with possible options to address the problem, right? Now you take a decision in the planning and design stage and know what the theory of change you could deploy, all right? What are the different design options that you could use? Do we use a bottom-up or a top-down approach? Do we use the community-centered, whichever design you would want to use? During the COVID, for instance, would you want to go for a lockdown or a gradual control? I mean, an expanded case tracing and identification of cases, and not necessarily locking down. So the different options you want to go for, then you can consider how to design it to make it suit your context. And there are different pieces of evidence that you could use in that stage. All right. At the third stage, which is the output stage, or some call it the implementation stage, this is where you are looking at implementing the program. So in implementing the program, what are the different pieces of evidence that can help you implement better? Okay, and those are some of so these are all the different types that come in here. So for in implementing the program, your interest is in the output. So what are the different monitoring systems that you can deploy and use in watching your expected outputs? Are the outputs happening? What you expected to, the people you expected to reach, are they the ones you are reaching? Those are the kind of things you'll be looking at here. Okay, you need to do a lot of evaluation, monitoring, and then evaluation here to think through your program, whether they are meeting the results that you set for yourself earlier. And then the fourth stage here, so that, like I mentioned, there are different models. Others will use different ones. But the key point we're trying to emphasize here is that at each stage of the policymaking process, there are pieces of evidence that you could fall on. Okay, looking at the 4 major types of evidence we're looking at. So at the design stage, for instance, a good source of evidence will be citizen knowledge or citizen evidence. But very often, government agencies or the officers in government agencies sit in their offices and then think through the problem by themselves and assume that they understand the problem without necessarily engaging citizens. If we engage citizens, we get to understand what the real concerns are and not what we think the concerns are, right? At the planning and design stage, what have other people thought through as options to address that problem? This is where particularly practitioner expertise, the practice informed evidence is very important. What are the previous evaluations? What have they suggested that could be useful for this? These are the different things, then pieces of evidence that you may want to consult. At the implementation phase, there are evidence that you need to look at, and typical ones here are the monitoring and evaluation types. Okay, these are equally important to evaluate how your program is going, whether you are meeting the targets that you are set for yourself, reaching the population that you targeted to reach, how is budget going and all that, right? These are things you can look at. And then at the evaluation stage, the final stage, the impact and the outcome stage, you need to look at what the impacts or the outcomes that you set for yourself, whether you are reaching them, and then the impacts as well. Value for money, very important in here. How much did you spend on this program? Was it the same as you had set out to do? Could you have done better? Here it's for lots of learning. Okay, and these are the different kinds of evidence that you can consult at this stage. Any other?
Yes, sir.
All right, yes. Sheku, I see
Yeah,
Nora's
Sheku.
hand up. Let me pick Nora and then I'll come to you. Yes, Nora.
Okay, thank you very much. You've explained the sector for how will I put it? Now because like typically where I come from Nigeria, there are issues whereby the planning was good, every other step was followed, but the problem we have here is majorly maintenance and culture. Like that's why you see lots of abandoned projects.
Is what?
Maintenance culture, and you
Okay,
have lots of abandoned projects.
Mhm.
Yes, the problem was analyzed, the planning was done, monitoring was done. At the end of it all, the purpose of which the whole process hasn't still benefited anyone. And you see so many projects abandoned along the line. And you see that even the projects that were even executed, nothing is done to maintain such like infrastructure like road maintenance. You see that after a bridge has been constructed, after so many years, you see that, you have to go there to maintain and check that this bridge is still fit for the next 2, 3, 4 years, whatever is the time. So what can be done in that case? Because we have issues of lots of,
Can you help me, or can any other learner in the room help me tell where the problem is coming from what we've just discussed? We're trying to diagnose this kind of a situation. Yes, Shadrach.
Okay, so I would say it's for the third quadrant, monitoring the plan and the review or the refined control. So there's an issue with that area, monitoring the outcome.
The third quadrant is actually used during implementation. So when the road is being constructed, to know whether the design of the thickness of the road, the width of the road, and everything is working, right? But the problem of maintenance culture comes in the fourth quadrant, where we're looking at the outcome or the impact of that. Here, the project or the program would have been running for some time, and so you would want to go back to see whether it is delivering the results that it was intended to have delivered after it was you had finished, after the output stage. Here, what is the impact? So what are we learning from the road? If the road is let's say deteriorating faster, what may have happened? It means there is a shortfall there. What is it that is causing? Was it a design problem? Was it that people are beginning to use the road for other purposes that are not supposed to be used for? Maybe there are big vehicles using the road, which maybe the road was not created for that purpose. Okay, the maintenance culture and things coming here at the fourth quadrant, where we'll need to look at the impacts on the decision or the projects or the program that has been implemented already. So here, the thing may have been finished already. So over a period of time, what are the changes that we are getting from that? And here, impact evaluations are very important. Impact evaluations. If, for instance, it's a health project, maybe a hospital was constructed, and then we notice that the condition that for which the hospital was instituted is still not resolved. Maybe it was an outbreak of a health issue, maybe a sickness, a disease, and then the problem still exists. What may be causing it? So here we may want to use the administrative data of the hospital. What are the concerns that people are reporting? Is it the same as we thought? Is it the same thing still killing them? If it is the same thing killing them, what is it then that we could do? Then you go back to the drawing table. So the learning that you acquired from the fourth quadrant, you take it back to the diagnosing stage, the first quadrant, and rethink the problem. Very often the program may be running very well, but even if it's running well, you may want to bring out the learnings. What are the success factors? What are the things producing these successes. And then we could look at maintaining those factors and possibly extending these factors to another policy condition or to another state, for instance, in Nigeria, or region in Ghana or Sierra Leone. So these are some of the things that we get. The fourth quadrant actually is very much underlooked. Very often, once we're done with the third quadrant, we think we're done. And so the people can then start using whatever facility it is we have given them. And politicians are very much noted for doing that. But once the road is constructed, once the school is built, the hospital is finished, we take pictures and share with the people. We are done. We are finished. No, you have not finished. The fourth quadrant is there. How can you tell us whether the factory that was set up is creating the jobs as was envisaged? The district office that was set up, is it administering the services that the people were looking for? Are they getting it? The agric office, the market that was constructed, is it impacting the lives of the people? Are traders able to sell their commodities better? Or within the shortest possible time, how is it affecting their finances, their livelihoods? These are things that impact evaluations bring out for all stakeholders, particularly the users, so that if it's not working well, we go back to the diagnosing side and then think through the problem. Is that okay?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Great, great. Thank you very much for confirming that. All right, so I see the different comments coming through the chat boxes. Very well noted. And I'm happy that we made so much learning for today. We seem to have come to the end of our learning for today. And we will be closing now to catch up on Tuesday. We will be looking at grants proposal writing and take a few things on that. Maybe I will give you, okay, yeah, we'll do everything during this that learning session. So there is no assignments for today. We are free to take our relaxation. We will meet hopefully on Tuesday. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Kojo Ananivi.
Very well, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sure, you're welcome. Enjoy the rest of your evening and see you all on Tuesday. Bye for now.
Thank you, sir. Bye for now.